And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show, everybody. It is Wednesday, December 4th. I am Josh Engleman, and I am here to break down a 6-game NBA slate. And it's not too shabby, honestly. I don't hate what I looked at so far, but maybe I'll hate it as we break everything down. I hope you guys had some success yesterday. A pretty normal slate for most of the day, even for all the games we had. No real craziness in any of the games. The NBA Cup stuff went pretty normal, all things considered. Knicks beat the shit out of the Magic. Ultimately didn't matter. The Boston Celtics are not a part of the Final Four teams, which honestly, I don't think anybody saw coming, but that's what happens when you don't beat Washington and Chicago by enough. So Knicks, Magic, Bucks, and Hawks, just like everybody predicted. I certainly didn't see that one coming at all. So weird. And then on the West side, Houston, OKC, Golden State. And the Dallas Mavericks with the old plus 46 point differential. Golden State lost to Dallas, had an 8-point differential in 3-1, going 3-1, and still won the group by just simply beating Dallas. How is Boston out? They don't have the same. They have less of a point differential than the Magic. So Boston's cooked. Knicks, Magic, Bucks, Hawks. That's what you get in the East. Celtics are out. Yeah, no more Boston Celtics. I'm sure they're not super brokenhearted about it. Wait, is this schedule real? Oh, they didn't do what they did last year. Let's talk about this for a second before we get started. So last year, they moved some stuff around in terms of rescheduling the teams that were out, but they had everybody play on the first day that they did that. That is not happening this time. So we only have one game on Monday, Knicks and Raptors. Then we get the double quarterfinal on Tuesday, double quarterfinal on Wednesday. I was expecting them, and maybe this just isn't updated, but I'm assuming it is. I was expecting them to play 11 games on Thursday with all of the teams that weren't a part of the quarterfinals. We're only getting 3 games, at least based on the NBA.com schedule. Now, that might just be wrong. Let's check ESPN. Actually, let's check NBA.com. But if that's the case, then the Friday, only an 8-game, which is pretty weird. And then Tuesday of next week will only be 1 game as well. They got to be adding more games, don't they? Mike, why do you say that? There's literally no difference. You're completely wrong here, but why is it awful? What's different to you? All right. So yeah, 3 games on Thursday, 8-gamer on Friday. I was fully expecting 11 and 13, or at least 11 and then a bunch. Interesting. When are the Sixers trading Joel? I mean, they couldn't do it until next year anyway. He's ineligible to be traded at this point. David Sachs, while I like where you're going with that one, there's no way to make point differential be a regular thing. What would that be for? The point differential is a regular thing every day. When you win, you have more points. There's no tiebreakers after 82 games. I don't disagree. I'm a fan of professional teams kicking the shit out of their opponent because they're professionals, and if you don't like it, stop them. But not really any way to implement that. I mean, that's why I love it in soccer. It matters in soccer, even after 38 games. Goal differential's everything. I mean, I think the Celtics cared. Like, 3-1 with a plus 23 point differential. That's still really good. Good. It just so happened that Orlando beat the living Sean. Bring back 90s basketball? Do not bring back 90s. There was never a worse time of basketball than the 90s. That was like the low point of basketball in terms of watching the game. I would never, ever, ever want 90s basketball back. The memories of 90s basketball have been clouded in a big way. Yeah, Timothy Puckett, that's something that I've felt in the past. I'll put that up on the screen so people could see it. I wish they would get rid of East-West, make it based on record. For the most part, I agree with you. But there is something special about having that delineation. But I don't disagree. Like, I like it on paper. It's not as necessary now with the way travel is set up, and the schedule doesn't really have to change. But I don't know. There's something about East versus West in the rivalries that's I don't like losing that. So, Mike, why do they need a better incentive? I'm not saying I disagree. I've been on record from the jump that the winner of the cup should get the first pick after the lottery, and it should be tradable this year. But I mean, it's just like they're all still just regular season games. There's no difference. For some reason, you don't like the fact that there's a theme around it. It's weird. Weird. Danny Pettiford. Does Stokastic have anything for single entry players? Everything we have is for every style of player that exists. Whatever you play, all of our stuff works for what you do. 6 games. This is a little bit better of a start. It's not just me. Not just me trying to figure out where Jalen Green should get traded to. Yeah, well, Tim Hardaway Sr. probably did a lot of coke in the 80s. Not that bright. What awful East teams did we end up with? The Knicks are good. The Magic are good. The Bucks are good. The Hawks are interesting. Boston went 3-1. You don't like it? Win more. Win by more. I know this is random, but is Trae Young an elite playmaker? Absolutely. Is J-Dub a top 10 player? Not even close. And I don't say that to besmirch Jalen Williams. I love him, but top 10, not even close. Not even in the conversation. But I love him. I hope he will be. Is Donovan Mitchell in the MVP conversation? No, not even close. He's not even in the All-NBA conversation. Mitchell's having his worst year in 5 years. Is Tatum top 5? 5, maybe. He's right there. He's right there. Yeah, Brian, you're crazy. There's never been a better time for NBA expansion. There's never been more talent in this ecosystem than there is right now. We could easily support 2 more teams, and we'll be getting them soon enough when Vegas and Seattle. Am I a top 10 DFS player? No. CG. So this year so far in offensive plus minus, Mitchell's sitting at 2.9. That would be his lowest offensive plus minus since 2020, which was his second year in Utah. No, third year in Utah. 58% true shooting. It's fine. He's shooting well from 3. Rebounds are kind of where they always are. Assist rate is back down, probably at the expense of Garland, but dropped from 27% last year to 20% this year. Blocks and steals are down a hair. I don't want to make it sound like Mitchell's bad, but so far this season, he hasn't been as good as he has been the previous 2 years for Cleveland. Doesn't mean that he can't be, doesn't mean that can't change, but for Donovan Mitchell, it's been slightly worse than normal. Still awesome. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think Mitchell... I agree with Danny. I don't think Mitchell wants to be in Cleveland. But being in a great situation trumps that a bit. So, as long as Cleveland has Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and they're going to be a 50-plus win team, then you put up with being in a city that you don't necessarily want to be in. The moment that goes away, then Donovan Mitchell doesn't want to be there. But when they're good, everybody wants to be somewhere good. Pretty much everybody wants to be somewhere good rather than be somewhere bad. What else we got? Yeah, CG, exactly. It's not even the alpha role. It's just, honestly, Darius Garland's been awesome so far this year. And, I think the ball is just, not necessarily from a usage perspective, but the ball is just in Mitchell's hands a little bit less. David Sachs, Garland got hurt. We got anything else in chat here that we want to hit on? Cavs aren't beating a healthy Celtics team? No. No, they will not. I agree. Yeah, I mean, he's still a plus 3.5 EPM guy. That's really good. He's already been worth 3 wins. That's been good, but he's not in any sort of MVP discussion. For me right now, the MVP is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Whether that ends up being the case by the time the season's over, I would lean towards Jokic. But if we're grading it till right now, Shai is my MVP. But I would assume Jokic will run him down. I don't get the sense that people are going to agree with me on Shai over Jokic, but I'm okay with that. Do we have any deals right now to join? It's on the screen right now, Danny. Cyber24 is the promo code, 50% off any single sport light package that we have. If you follow the link in the description of this video, it'll take you right to Stokastic and show you everything you would get for that deal. Here's my the only reason that I have Shai right now is the fact that he has played 5 more games than Nikola Jokic. The difference between 21 games and 16 games is not enough for Jokic to make it up in the fact that he has just been on a different planet so far this year. When we get to the end of the season and Shai's played 77 and Jokic has played 72, then that gap won't matter as much. But for right now, 5 games is a lot. And if I'm measuring value, 21 games of Shai, 16 games of Jokic, and 5 games of a replacement center, I can't close that gap yet. But over the course of the season, if you're asking me who I think will win it, it would be Jokic. But it's Shea for me right now. Yeah, Danny, we've got deals right now. I mean, you could always get in for free if you sign up through one of our affiliates. Yeah, Jeremy, I'm with you that I think it'll be Jokic. But 5 games is a lot. I would have it Shea, Jokic, Tatum, Giannis, and honestly, I'm gonna have some fun with this one for right now since it won't stay. Number 5 is usually the fun spot. Give it to Franz. Curry hasn't played enough, David. Not that he hasn't been great, because he has, but he hasn't played enough. He's played 7 less games than Franz and 2.5 minutes less per game than Franz. Is there a basketball equivalent to baseball's WAR or WARP? So Dunks and Threes has estimated wins based on your plus minus and playing time. I tend to use that. All right, let's go. 6 games. How long can LeBron be this good? Well, he hasn't been that good this year. So I think now is the time that we find out how long LeBron can be this good. I think it was the end of last year. I mean, he's only been a 0.7 EPM guy so far this year. 57% true shooting would be the lowest true shooting mark he has had since 2008 with Cleveland. LeBron's been pretty bad this year for LeBron. Still an average player, probably gets a little bit better, but we have seen him fall off so far. LeBron was taking PEDs while in Miami. I hope so. I hope he's been taking PEDs every day of his life. All right, let's break this slate down. Game number 1, the Detroit Pistons. 13.5 point underdogs in Boston, 221.5 total. Now, Detroit is on a back-to-back, so we don't technically know what they're going to be doing today. What I can say is that the Pistons are the lowest owned team on DraftKings, and not only is it not close, but there's essentially no one even in the discussion. They're at 9% ownership. The next closest team is Philly at 27, and then everybody else is above 50. So no one is getting to the Pistons. Dogs moving around behind me. Didn't know what was going on. But unless we get somebody out here, I really don't see the path to getting to Detroit really in any way. Now, Cade's getting 14% ownership on FanDuel where he's only 9,100. I think that makes sense. I have him 13% optimal. But, I mean, there's just no ownership coming into these guys, and I don't really think there should be. I barely got them. I ran a sim using the $8 or the $8 excellent eights payout structure on DraftKings. So it's a 4,400 person contest. I grabbed my top 132 lineups, which is the max you could do, just to see what my exposures would look like. And in that, the most I got of anybody was 2% of Cade and 2% of Tim Hardaway. It just, there's nothing here for Detroit. They look a hair better on FanDuel, but not really. Not with any sort of like major interest. They're the team with the least amount of they're the team with the second least optimal rate for me. They're the team with the second least amount of boom score overall. They just don't look good. They just don't look good. Coach Chris, what do you mean? I mean, Duren's basically the exact same guy he's always been. They just have more talent on the team, so he does less. His rim protection numbers this year have been insane. He's starting to look like a real difference maker defensively. He's up to a 5.5% block rate this season. That's 93rd percentile. Previous 2 years was 3.1 and 2.3. So he's more than doubled his block rate from last year. Defensively, while it hasn't looked good in plus minus, his rim protection's been quite a bit better. But he just doesn't... There's too many good players on the Pistons now. Rebounding rate, his offensive rebounding rate is up. His defensive rebounding rate is still 96th percentile. He's just never... He's a rim runner. He's a... like a poor man's Derek Lively, maybe? No, he's not Drummond. He's not Drummond. But I get where you're going with that. But, I mean, he's not really any different than he's ever been. He's never been really anything great. But I'm interested in what his defense is becoming. Now, the Boston side of this one. We have a Q tag on Jason Tatum. We have a Q tag on Drew Holiday. Everybody else for Boston that's normally available should be in. And what we're seeing is basically what Boston always looks like. 10% ownership to Tatum, 10% ownership to Brown, 10% ownership to White, 10% ownership to Holiday, 15% to Kristaps Porzingis. I do think that Porzingis looks the best of anybody. I went 30 minutes, 7K, center only. Could play more than 30 for sure, but I went 30. But I got 11% of Tatum, 14% of Brown, 11% of White, 17 of Drew, and 13 of Porzingis. I don't really see a priority from Boston, but I am more than happy if everybody is in to take any one of the starters around 10%. I do want to give one caveat here. The line is 13.5, or at least it was when I started this show. I have it at 17.5. That is leading me to believe that one of, and more likely, Drew Holiday isn't playing and Tatum is. That would be my first guess. The line will move considerably if one of those guys is out. Or, sorry, the line won't move considerably. My line will move considerably if one of those guys is out. And then it will sort of match the market. But I'm expecting one of these guys to not play today. Uh, 5 minutes late. MVP. Why Tatum over Giannis? So Tatum's played 3 more games than Giannis so far. They've been pretty comparable offensively. Tatum gets the nod in defensive EPM. I don't think that's too crazy. Giannis is not the same defensive guy that he's been before. Still great. To me, that's a coin flip for me. I don't have like a huge preference between the two, but right now I'm giving the slight nod in playing time to Tatum. But there's not really any separation for me there. Do you play more Celtics if Tatum is out? Absolutely. Everybody looks better. You play more Celtics if Drew is out. You pretty much play more of any team if some of their guys are out. But yeah, Boston, if you're in the starting 5, I am very much interested in trying to roster you because I think you look damn good. And you're facing Detroit. Like, they're 13.5 point favorites for a reason. Let's go to game number 2. Indiana Pacers, 2.5 point favorites in Brooklyn, 226 total. Now we're starting to get into a little bit more ownership and rates and all that good stuff. So for the Pacers, they're on a back-to-back. We don't really know what they're doing here. I'm going to assume that Andrew Nembhard is questionable, but he might just be out no matter what. And if that's the case, then you're bumping up your Quentin Jacksons and your Johnny Furphys. We've got 25% ownership coming into Jarris Walker right now, 3,800 on DraftKings, power forward only. Halliburton, Siakam, Turner, and McConnell are all between 10 and 15% owned. On the FanDuel side, it's pretty similar. McConnell's 25, Matherin's 20, Halliburton, Siakam, Turner, and Walker are all about 15. The guy I got the most of was Walker, 3,800, as I said, power forward. Minutes are there. He's playing like 24, 25, 26 a night. The price tag looks really good. He's not the best per minute guy in the world. He's a 0.81 guy in my model today, but I think he justifies every bit of his ownership. He was the most optimal guy for me. But I still got around 10% of Toppin, McConnell, Turner, Matherin, Siakam, Halliburton. It's hard to not want to get to these pieces from Indy. While it is a pretty big pace down spot for the Pacers, they're also facing a Brooklyn team that could be missing a bunch of dudes, is already missing a bunch of dudes no matter what. So the matchup here works quite a bit for the Pacers. But I do think the easiest guy to get to on DraftKings is Walker just because of that price. It's the price that matters here. But like I had Halliburton, 10% optimal. Siakam, 10% optimal. Matherin, 10% optimal. Turner got to 13. Walker got to 21. TJ got to 8. It looks good. There's a reason they're getting 93% total ownership. And there's a reason I'm basically right with the field. They look good. They look good. You guys like anything specific from the Pacers here? Yeah, Dennis Schroeder, 7,500 on DraftKings, 7,800 on FanDuel. We're getting some ownership in here to Brooklyn, but honestly, it's really hard to break them down. Like, we have a Q tag on Cam Johnson. We have a Q tag on Dorian Finney-Smith. We have a Q tag on Ben Simmons. We're already missing Cam Thomas, Boyan, Clowney, Jalen Martin, Zaire Williams. So I don't want to dig in too much to Brooklyn because this is all very subject to change. But we're getting 20% ownership to Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Ben Simmons on the FanDuel side. Like, if they're in, they look really good. I like Cam Johnson a lot today. He was 33% optimal for me. He's my number 3 guy on DraftKings, my number 2 guy on FanDuel. But, we don't know what they're doing here. They have 100 minutes up in the air right now. So I don't want to dig into this one too much. Schroeder looks okay. Probably a hair under-owned, if you're asking me. But we might be getting to Keon Johnson again, who finally got a bit of a price bump. We might be getting to Jalen Wilson. We might be getting to Shake Milton, Claxton, Watford, Sharp. We just don't know here for the Nets right now. Nets win outright tonight. Really going out on a limb here, huh? Taking that 2.5 point dog. I actually have the line even less than that. But we need to know who's in for Brooklyn. Like, if Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Ben Simmons don't play again, well, they're not going to look nearly as good as they do right now. But they'll look pretty good from a fantasy perspective because they get a pace up spot against the Pacers. But we can't. There's not much that I could say about Brooklyn right now. You're going to need to catch this one on the Deeper Dive or Live Before Lock when we get a little bit more news. All right, schedule for the rest of the day, because Danny desperately wants this. Coming up next, 10 a.m., Laffy, Greg, NFL Strategy Show. No NHL show today. Don't know if there's NHL games. No idea. 5:30 p.m. tonight, because Lock is at 7:30. 5:30 tonight. Myself and Spags are on the Deeper Dive. Eric and Greg are on Live Before Lock at 6:30. And then Greg and I will be on playback exclusively at 7:30. It's an interesting one because we have all these locks at 7:30 tonight. 4 of the 6 games lock at 7:30. Then we're just waiting out the news for Orlando and Philly at 8. And then we have a 2.5-hour break before the Minnesota Timberwolves take on the LA Clippers. Gotcha, Danny. Gotcha. Game 3. The Los Angeles Lakers are 2.5-point underdogs in Miami, 217.5 total. Lots of questionable tags here that can change some things. Austin Reeves is questionable today. Jimmy Butler is questionable today. Kevin Love is questionable today. Nobody else really that we need to pay attention to is out. Josh Richardson is questionable. I don't think that matters. So as I look at the Lakers, I think there's a lot to see here. The Lakers have more ownership right now than any team on the DraftKings slate. They're at 100 on the dot. We got a bunch of other teams in the 90s. So, like the Pacers, the Hawks, the Wolves, they're all in the same boat. And I think the best guy that you can get to right now for the Lakers, probably Anthony Davis at 10-5. I don't think that's all that cost prohibitive of a price tag. 10-5, center only, 22% owned. I actually only got 13. The guy I got the most is LeBron James, 9,500 power forward center, 29% owned. He ended up in 33% of my lineups. I don't think he grades out all that well, so I'm a little curious as to why I was getting to him. But I'm getting to more LeBron than anybody else. I got to 20% of Connect, 15 of Russell, 10 of Rui. I didn't really get to Reeves. Don't expect to get to him if he's questionable. Or sorry, if he's in. Russell and AD had the highest optimal rates. That does stand out to me. But, I'm happy to get a bunch of the Lakers here. Now, it is a pretty rough spot. Miami defense is solid. It's a huge pace down matchup for the Lakers. What do you guys see standing out for the Lakers here? Because I like a lot of it. But I do kind of think they're like a hair over-owned. I think that's why I'm ending up a little bit lighter on AD and not really taking a big jump over anybody else. I'm just really surprised about the LeBron ownership. It's got to be a positional thing more than anything else. On FanDuel, AD and Reeves are both 25% owned. Rui's 15. LeBron is 35. They look good there too. Most of that ownership is justified. I think AD's is the best. I would say Rui's properly owned. Feels like Reeves and LeBron are a hair too owned. Yeah, I like that. I like the AD Connect pair there. I don't mind Russell, and he might look a lot better if Reeves ends up out. But I like Russell's still $4,900. He's still $1,000 cheaper than he is on FanDuel. That's tough to ignore. But I like this Lakers side. There's a very obvious reason why they're the most owned team. The pricing looks good. Yeah, obviously, if Reeves ends up out, we start looking at even more Lakers stuff. Russell is not consistent. That's good. The last thing that I want to try to win a GPP is consistency. I want a guy that has wild range of outcomes. CG, more betting and odd shopper than DFS lately. It all just sort of depends on what my schedule is for the night and what my wife's doing. When she's out of town and I'm just on these shows till 8:30 tonight, then yeah, I'm playing DFS because why the hell not? But Monday night, she was leaving yesterday to head to Tampa. So Monday night, I didn't play. I wasn't on a late show. There was no playback. Her last night before she was heading to Tampa till Friday. So I didn't play DFS because I don't want to stick around. Russell's interesting just because of the price. You don't need a ton at 4,900 on a 6-gamer. Now, the Miami side. It's hard to really dig in too much here because the status of Jimmy Butler obviously changes everything. He's questionable with that right knee soreness. We are seeing Tyler Hero projected for 25% ownership on DraftKings, 30 on FanDuel. We've got Bam around 25 on DraftKings, 20 on FanDuel. Then everybody else is single digits on DK. But Butler got to 10, Rozier got to 10, and Robinson got to 15 on the FanDuel side. I actually think Butler might even be a little bit under-owned on FanDuel. I think Rozier and Robinson are both properly owned. I probably like Tyler Hero even more than the ownership, although I'm neutral to him on DraftKings. Neutral to Bam as well. I like the Miami side. I really do. But it's Hero and Bam for sure. And then I don't love much else. I mean, the only other guy that's in the discussion on DraftKings would be Butler. And he looks fine. Butler definitely looks better on FanDuel just because of the extra position. I got him a little bit more optimal over the top of that ownership. But Highsmith, Rozier, Robinson, Jaquez, Larson, Love, Burks, no real interest on the DraftKings side. But if Butler ends up out, then we probably pay a little bit closer attention to Haywood Highsmith as a value option, to Terry Rozier stepping into a couple extra minutes. Probably Jaime Jaquez. Jeremy, I don't know if he fell off a cliff. That implies that he was high enough to be on a cliff before. He fell off a hill. Fell off a hill. But lots of ownership coming into this one. Is this the game with the most? 167. Yeah. So this game has more ownership than any other game on the slate. So keep that in mind. But we need Reeves news. We need Butler news. Because both of those items will change up the way both of these teams look. Game 4. Now, this one's a little tricky. We do have an Orlando Magic injury report. So let's clap it up for the Orlando Magic administration for getting that one out on a back-to-back. Love to see it. Philly does not have a injury report. Now, I have no idea what Philly's going to do. It doesn't seem like Joel Embiid is playing, and I'm pretty sure Andre Drummond's still out. But does Paul George play today? I don't know. Does Kyle Lowry play today? I don't know. But on the Orlando side, Goga is questionable. Now, he got scratched within the half hour before that game started. So he's actually the most owned guy on DraftKings right now. 5,100 for Goga, 25% owned. That's what I got to as well. I like Goga if he's in, but if he's not in, then we're looking at Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Wagner a little bit differently. Suggs is 10% owned. Carter's 10% owned. De Silva's 10% owned. All sort of makes sense to me from a value option. Franz isn't really getting any love, nor is KCP, but I got all of these guys. I got 7 of Franz, 8 of KCP, 9 of Suggs, 6 of Carter, 23 of Goga, 13 of De Silva. I got Mo, I got Black, I got Isaac. I got a lot of Orlando here, but the most I got of anybody is Goga if he's in. Now, the FanDuel side has a little bit different ownership. Suggs has the MPE and he's cheaper. He's 30% owned there. I completely agree with it. Franz is 13% owned on FanDuel. I completely agree with it. Goga's still 15% owned there. That looks fine. Mo Wagner's 10% owned on FanDuel. That looks fine because of the power forward eligibility. So they look very different across both sites. And we're very live to get changes here that impact everything from Orlando. Because if Goga Bitadze is the most owned Orlando Magic guy, and then he doesn't play, that changes up a lot for all of their rotations. So we need to pay close attention to what ends up happening for Goga. But if you're playing on DraftKings, he's also the best Orlando Magic play today. Now, the Philly side, I honestly don't even really want to dig into it. We do have Paul George projected for 15% ownership on DraftKings. No one else getting any love. We also have 27 to Paul George on FanDuel. No one else really getting any love other than Yabusele, who's only 5,500. But until we get an injury report for Philly, I don't I don't have like an easy time breaking this down. I'm not all that interested in Tyrese Maxey, although, if George ends up out, that changes. Maybe we can be looking at Jared McCain if Paul George and Kyle Lowry happen to not play. They started KJ Martin yesterday. Maybe that ends up being Caleb Martin again. But I don't really see much here. I really don't. Yeah, Frankie, I don't think I agree with you there. But maybe if Paul George is out, that changes the equation a bit. But if Paul George is in, I don't think Maxey looks very good. It's just tough here for Philly. Not to mention, this is the game with the lowest pace. This is the game with the lowest total. Orlando's defense is really good, no matter what we saw yesterday. So not exactly a great environment for Philly either. There's a reason they're 3.5-point dogs at home. Yeah, Sixers don't exactly have any rim protection or rebounding right now. It's tough sledding with no Embiid and no Drummond. Look, I assume that PG is sitting? Yeah, I would be leaning towards PG sitting. But I will say this. With Paul George in, I only have a difference of a 0.5 point on the line. So I think the line will move a little bit if Paul George ends up out. And for right now, with no injury report, I don't usually make those assumptions. But I would not be shocked at 7:30 if we get the Philly injury report and Paul George is just out. But kind of what I expect. But for right now, he's in. That's an early show for you. 2 to go. This is the game with the highest total by 10 full points, and the team with the game with the highest pace by 2.5 possessions. The Atlanta Hawks are 4.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 236 total. Normal people available for the Hawks. I went with the exact same rotation that the Bucks played yesterday. Obviously, that's subject to change. We don't have an injury report. So ownership on Atlanta. We're getting around 25% to Bogdan Bogdanović. I think it's pretty clear he's the best option you can get to from Atlanta. Trae Young and DeAndre Hunter are both around 15. I have Atlanta as the most optimal team on the slate out of anybody on DraftKings. Trae, 10% optimal. Jalen Johnson, 13. Dyson Daniels, 13. Hunter, 20. Bogdanović, 33. Okongwu, 10. Capella, 14. Risache, 7. I like everything here from Atlanta, but I think Bogdanović is the best play. I think Trae is probably second. DeAndre Hunter, third. But I'm going to have a lot of this Atlanta team no matter what. They're one of the higher owned teams. They're one of those teams in that 90 to 100 range. But I'm more than okay with getting to basically everybody that plays 20-plus minutes for Atlanta regularly. But I think Bogdanović and Trae are my priorities. DeAndre Hunter just fits. But Bogdanović, 4,400 shooting guard, small forward on a 6-gamer, that flexibility is massive, and that's why you're seeing that ownership. Now, these guys look infinitely worse on FanDuel. Everybody's price is worse. Trae's 500 more expensive. Jalen Johnson is 600 more expensive. Dyson Daniels is $900 more expensive. Hunter is 600 more expensive. Bogdanović is 600 more expensive. Okongwu is 700 more expensive. Capella is 600. Risache is 900. Everybody's like $500 more expensive on the FanDuel side, and that's why you're seeing no one get to double digits. It's tough. Is Jalen Johnson an all-star? No. Not even close. No, not even remotely close. So I kind of like everything here. You want to roll the dice on the centers? I get it. One of them will probably play 27 minutes. Never know which one it's going to be. But it's been a while since we've been able to roster Dyson Daniels on DraftKings, and today is like a day where you can actually do that. Now, the DraftKings side of Milwaukee, there's nothing coming in here other than Giannis. 25% ownership to Giannis at 12-1. 35 on FanDuel, where he's 12K. Now, you can get to Dame for 8,900 on FanDuel. He's a little over 15% owned. I actually think he's a bit under-owned on the FanDuel side. But on DraftKings, no one else is in double digits other than Giannis. And I don't really see it. Like, you could tell me Dame's a 10. Brook Lopez should be around 10. I could handle that. But it's really Giannis and not much else in terms of any sort of priority. Which makes sense. I mean, I'm more than happy to spend $12,100 in salary on a power forward center Giannis on a day where it seems like we're going to have enough value, and Milwaukee's getting a massive pace up spot here. They gained 2.1 possessions over their average. That's helpful. That's over an extra fantasy point just from matchup for Giannis. But you can see, like, I didn't get more than 10% of anybody. I only got Brook Lopez north of 10% optimal compared to Giannis. Those are the only guys that I'm really paying attention to. FanDuel's different, though. Dame's 18% owned, and he should probably be a little bit more owned than that. But Giannis looks great. Just looks absolutely great. And now we get to the final game. One last reminder, guys. I want you guys to do this. I mentioned it at the start. I'm going to mention it now. This ends today. This offer goes away. The link is in the description. 50% off any sport light package. Promo code CYBER24. CYBER24. Just click that link. Sign up. Lop off 50% of your first payment. Get projections and ownership. Discord. Some lesser versions of our simulation tools, but still fully functional. If you've ever wanted to test out what we have behind the paywall, this is a good way to do it. Probably going to be sitting on no promos for a bit. Something will pop up for Christmas, and then that is going to be largely it until baseball season starts. So if you guys want to get in, this is the time to do it. All righty. Final game. DFS PhD. Is number of games played that important for MVP at the end of the year beyond meeting qualifications? Not really. Not really. I mean, to me, yes. Like, you get a guy that played 65 and a guy that played 75. It's really hard to make up 10 games of value to me. But, you know, when it gets to like, oh, he played 77, he played 74, I don't mind it. It's not as crazy to me. NBA fan, it's absolutely bogey time. Final game, late night hammer. Again, 2.5 hours after the Atlanta-Milwaukee tip-off. We will basically just have this game left to figure out the slate. Wolves are 2.5-point favorites in LA, taking on the Clippers, 211 total. Wolves don't have anybody on their injury report. I assume we're getting their normal 8. I still have Terrence Mann in right now for the Clippers, but he left early with a fractured finger. I just don't know enough about it, which hand, how long he's out. Depending on which finger it is, it might not matter. So I didn't look into that one yet, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Terrence Mann happens to be out. We've got 40% ownership coming into Mike Conley. Completely agree with it. One of the best plays you can get to today. He's in 50% of my stuff. He's 56% owned on FanDuel. He's even better there. I completely agree with that ownership. Honestly, I think it should be even higher than DraftKings. Yeah, Frankie, I really don't want to have to shit all over James Harden right now, but poop, I guess. The year that he is having is not good, no matter how much people want to think that it is. Other guys that I'm getting to for Minnesota, Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid are both 15% owned. I'm essentially matching that. Everybody else is single digits, though. Very little coming into Ant. I think Rudy Gobert continues to be interesting, given the fact that he's playing 36 minutes a night. We just need him to, like, mildly participate offensively for once. I didn't really get much. I mean, I'm pretty well just getting to Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's down to 3,900, by the way, and Naz Reid. But I don't really have much Randall. Like, McDaniels stinks. I'd like to get more Ant. I think Ant looks pretty good on FanDuel at 8,800. I have him a little bit under-owned. I think you can make a case that Gobert's a little under-owned on the FanDuel side, too. Honestly, the most under-owned guy on FanDuel might actually be Naz Reid, only 7% owned. I only have him at an 8% optimal, but I don't think it'd be too crazy if he dropped 30 fantasy points. And that's really all you need today. But there are pieces of the Minnesota side you got to get to. Mike Conley in particular, who is currently sitting at number 2 on DraftKings contenders and number 1 on FanDuel. Now, for the Clippers, I don't want to dig into this one too much. As I said, I'm expecting Terrence Mann to not play. Don't know if Kevin Porter Jr. will play. Don't really know if Norm Powell is going to play today. He missed a couple games earlier in the week, and then now they're going to be playing 3 games in 4 nights. So that could be possible. So we kind of got to wait on this one. And what we're seeing right now is basically scattered ownership. 15 to Harden, 15 to Zubats, 10 to Mann, 15 to Dunn, a little bit to Powell, a little bit to Jones. And that's kind of how I see it as well. We kind of need this injury news to hash out before we can really set our sights on the Clippers, because maybe we have no Kevin Porter Jr. and no Terrence Mann and potentially no Norm Powell. And if that ends up being the case, I'm at least a little bit interested in that. Did I look at this yesterday? I think I did. I did this on the show yesterday. T-Wolves fans can't wait until Randall leaves town. Based on that game that the Knicks played yesterday, they actually caught the Minnesota starting 5. So the Brunson, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns starting 5 is now +8 on the year. Conley, Edwards, McDaniels, Randall, Gobert, +7.5. The biggest problem of the Minnesota Knicks trade isn't Julius Randle. Not that I'm a big fan. It's the fact that Dante DiVincenzo turned into a pumpkin. That's the real issue. But yeah, for anybody that likes Harden tonight, I don't really love it. I don't see it. Not at 9,400. The assists are great. Can't deny that. And if Norm Powell happens to be out, that'll help out a little bit. James Harden this season is shooting 47% from 3, or from the 47% from the field at the rim. That is a second percentile outcome. 47% effective field goal percentage is a 17th percentile outcome. He's shooting 34% from 3. Offensively, this is the worst season that James Harden has had since his second year. Do I think DiVincenzo gets traded again? I doubt it. It would be crazy if they traded Dante DiVincenzo. You don't trade a guy on a really good, well, what was a really good contract at the floor of his value. Can't do it. You just got to hope he gets better. It's really all you can do. Now, John, hold on. I said it, but let me reiterate. I am not saying I'm a big fan of Julius Randle at all. At all. The 30-something-year-old guy averaging 22, 6, and 8 isn't having a good season. Yeah, I don't look at basketball card stats. And to be clear, he's still been good, but he's just been the worst version of James Harden that we've seen since he was 22 years old. We got to stop only adding up the cards or the stats that they show on the back of the newest Panini card. This guy is shooting 47% effective field goal percentage. That's atrocious. The reason he's averaging 22 points a game is because his usage is 30%. He's not a good DFS play. David, by any chance, do you get those 70 points that he scored the other night today? I'm just curious. Because if they do that now, then yeah, I would want to play some James Harden. I would want to play some James Harden if I could use some of his 70 points from the other night. Today, he's 9,400 on DraftKings, 9,800 on FanDuel, and not in any way a priority. All right, Frankie, what's the percentage chance that he hits 7x today? I'll wait. Whatever number you say, I guarantee it's lower than that. The odds of James Harden going for 7x today is like 5%. Well, they're winning, so James must be doing something right. Yeah, you know what they're doing right? The defense is good. They're 5th in defense. And there's not a soul in this chat that's going to tell me they're 5th in defense because James Harden did it. Not a soul. He can drop 70 on any given slate. No. I mean, yes, in that, like, so can everybody else. Yeah, so Brandon, we're talking about two different things here. Opportunity exists for Harden, but he doesn't project all that well. What were the odds when he dropped the last 70? The same as they are today. Awful. Awful. The odds of anybody dropping 70 are like 1% or less. We got to stop thinking that's like a normal outcome. But yeah, you want to know why the Clippers are 14-9? It's because their defense is 5th. That's everything. And there's never been a scenario in the world where James Harden is the reason that someone is 5th in defense. But shout out to Zoo and Jones Jr. and Mann and Dunn and Batum, because those are the guys that are doing the work. Those are the guys doing the work. All right. 9:59 and 40 seconds. This show is over, folks. Hit the like button on your way out the door. NFL Strategy Show coming up next. Contenders posted in the next hour. Let's have some fun. We'll have a lot more news on the deeper dive later tonight, and that is what we're looking for. Good luck, everybody. And like I said from the beginning, I have 12% James Harden. Hope one of those lineups are the winners. Peace.